There we go. Oh, look at the people. Look at. We'll have to count the.
Hi, everybody. Hi. One thing I love about living at Woodland Pond is everything starts on time. I just love that. Anyway, welcome everybody. And I see some new faces, perhaps some future residents. Welcome. Welcome everybody to Council Connections. My name is Ronnie Sue Jaffe, and I'm going to be the interviewer of our star today, Bernice Hummel, who's going to talk about her life, her history, which made her who she is today, and about her participation in the memoir writing group here, which is, when she told me about it, it was just fabulous. We'd like to keep questions for the end, if you don't mind, unless it's absolutely, you got to know right away. Otherwise, let's leave it for the end. And when we do have questions and answers, if you wouldn't mind coming up to the mic, because this is going on to the YouTube, the Woodland Pond YouTube, and if you're not on the mic, they won't hear you, or I can bring it around to you. Or Ina will bring it around. Okay, thank you, Ina. Okay, without further ado, I'd like to introduce Bernice Hummel.
I am so thrilled so many of you have come today. I'm a member of the memoir class. We've had to read our memoirs out loud and being critiqued by my college professor and my classmates. My classmates felt that you should hear some of.
Bernice.
Let me do this. Okay. You should hear some of my memoirs. So I'll tell you about my life, but I'm going to slip in a few of my memoirs along the way, and I hope you enjoy them. You can tell us of my background. I was born on a large 250-acre dairy farm in central New York. We had 50 milking cows and about 3,000 chickens, with cash crops of potatoes and cabbages for silver floss. I don't know if silver floss is I don't know if they're still in business, but they make sauerkraut. I had a much older sister who eventually married a farmer and a much younger brother. I was the middle child, and you know, the middle child is always the problem. And I was no exception. At age 5, I walked along alone 1.5 miles on a lonely country road to a one-room schoolhouse. 4 months into my first grade, I was booted up to 3rd grade. Men on the farm swear a lot. My father and 3 hired men were very good at it, and I was a quick learner. The men laughed at this little twerp of 5 who could hold her on with all of them. At age 5, I just loved math, but being bumped into the 3rd grade, multiplications of fractions was difficult. One day it was too much, and I said, "Damn it," out loud. It could have been worse. Total silence. The teacher, with bulging eyes, grabbed me by the ear and led me to the back of the room to the wash basin, put a slip of ivory soap in my mouth, and turned me to the other students and told me to hold that soap in my mouth for 2 minutes. The first minute was all right, but you can't hold your tongue still. At the second minute, soap bubbles kept coming out of my mouth, much to the delight of my fellow students. I was so embarrassed, I never swore again in school. I never had a doll, but at 9 years of age, I received my Pinto pony for my birthday. Big mistake. if I was having more experience handling animals, that was true, but now I was mobile. You celebrated Thanksgiving a few weeks ago and had a great time. I had a great time on Halloween as well. I was 11 and my kid brother was 7. We were buddies and Bud joined me in everything we got in trouble with. This one Halloween, I want to do something different, something real big, real big. Let's turn over the neighbor's outhouse. Bud said, let's do it. I had my Pinto and Bud had his pony. Now I had to work on strategy. I needed a cooked chicken leg with thigh left over from supper, and I needed it dark. When all was met, we walked our horses along the side of the road in the grass so we wouldn't be heard. We walked up the driveway, and when Rover came charging at us, and before he made one beep, I threw the chicken leg at him. Total silence. Outhouses have a hinge on the back. That is how they are cleaned. Nell, my horse, and I went to the back and threw my lasso over the back corner, pulled it tight, wound my rope around my saddle horn. I sat back in the saddle and I told Nell, she braced her feet, and all of a sudden that back house went over and crashed on the ground. I unflipped the rope, got the heck out of there quickly. And Bud on the way back was saying, that was so much fun. What we didn't know was the farmer had heard the crash, looked out the window and recognized my white Pinto leaving the driveway. We got home, stabled, watered, and grained the horses and went into the house. There was the farmer talking to my father. My father was red in the face and was apologizing for my behavior. Then I heard the farmer say, even the damn dog didn't bark. I had to go back early the next morning with a hired man to write the White House. As I got older, my assigned jobs by my father had more responsibility. My father was short-tempered with horses. They reacted by being nervous and jumpy. I had no such problems. I could crawl all over them, under them, and I did to take care of them. We also had 2 black German shepherd dogs who were brothers and weighed about 100 pounds apiece. They were working dogs, not pets. They herded the cows and gave security to the farm. They were not friendly dogs and were not supposed to be. They had snapped at my father and had bitten one of the hired men. They lived in the horse barn and had their own straw beds. They were my buddies. I could lay with them, and I did. There's another example. When the farmers came to buy eggs from the farm, they never got out of the car. Jack and Jen would circle the car quietly, front and back, not barking, not snarling, not showing teeth. The neighbors would toot their horns, and Mother would have me go out and take their orders. The dog would stand on each side of me, ready as if to say, don't you dare touch her. One summer night at 3 a.m., the farm had a severe lightning and thunderstorm. I could hear the horses kicking in their stalls. My father heard them too. He came to my door and said, tend the horses, and went back to bed. That was my job, to take care of the horses. So I ran in my pajamas and sneakers across the muddy driveway to the barn, turned on the lights, and saw the horses pulling on the ropes and dancing in place. Okay, Jane, settle down. And Joan, you're older, you should know better. They did settle down, but it took some time. They could have kicked unknowingly with 8-inch horseshoes with deadly force and make damage. The lightning had abated, but it was still raining hard outside. I didn't want to run back to the house, for the barnyard was slippery with mud. The horse barn had an extra horse stall with a manger filled with hay. I climbed into the manger to sleep until morning. Up jumped Jack and the black shepherds on each side of me. We were so crowded in the manger, Jack almost covered me. Oh, Jack, you feel so good. You're so soft and dry. On my other side, my head laid between the Jim's front legs. I could feel his whiskers once in a while sweep my cheeks. As I fell asleep, I felt a light tongue sweep my chin. Then his chin dropped to my shoulder. My father came into the barn in the morning to wake me up and said, "I'm glad the horses didn't get hurt." Did I ever go to college?
Yes. She's telling me what to say. Bernice, did you ever want to go to college?
Yes, absolutely. And
Tell us about
I'll
that.
tell you why. At 16, I had to make a decision. I didn't want to live like my mother. She was a slave to the farm, always tired, overworked, and unappreciated. My problem was my father. Get it out of your head, you're going to college. We had many heated verbal debates. My mother kept encouraging me to apply to Syracuse, the nearest college. My father kept saying, "You're not going to college. I need you on the farm." Mother kept saying, "Apply anyhow." I did apply that January, accepted in March in the dietetic program and minored in home administration. My father said, "I told you not to apply. I'm not going to help. You are on your own." My mother kept saying, "We'll see, we'll see." When the bill came for the tuition, mother stepped up and presented cash to cover my first year. She had been skimming money out of the milk and egg money for months. Now for room and board. I wrote Syracuse for any jobs on campus. I received a job as housekeeper to Dr. and Mrs. Strobridge, who lived 1/2 mile off campus. So in 1936, at 16 years of age, I entered Syracuse to get my degree in science in 3.5 years. My father silently drove me to the Strobridge house, dropped my one suitcase and drove off. I had a room in the attic, which was small, but very comfortable, great for studying. My housekeeper job was reasonable, no more than I did on the farm. I had Saturday and Sunday off, so I worked as a waitress at Hotel Syracuse, Saturday night and Sunday noon for the biggest tips. The rest of the time I had to use for studying. It gave me money to buy used books. I lived with the Strobridges for 3 years. For tuition each year, I worked as a waitress at the Lake Placid Club at Lake Placid, New York. Has everybody been to Lake Placid? I worked at the Lake Placid Club for 3 summers. I bussed back and forth from the Adirondacks to the Strobridges. The 3rd summer, I was assigned the 8-chair table of Kate Smith. Probably half of you weren't born yet. The singer known for her theme, "When the Moon Comes Over the Mountain." She owned one of the 1,000 islands where she had a studio for the summer. She would yacht from her studio to the club. In the morning, she would eat alone, and we had many conversations. She knew I was raised on a farm. She knew I was 19 years old. "What college did you go to? What was your major?" I waited, and other questions is, "What do you want to be?" I waited on her and her many guests for 2.5 months. On the last night I served her, she gave me a hug and an envelope. In my room, I opened the envelope and found 5 $100 bills. That tip was unheard of. That was the money for my whole semester. That fall, Kate Smith sang "God Bless America," written by Irving Berlin for the first time on radio, and history was made. At 19 years of age, I graduated from Syracuse University with a degree in science. I received a great education at Syracuse, I really did. I even took courses in med school, so the doctors who gave me appointments for diets I could understand. The only thing I missed was the social obligation or opportunities because I had to work and study 1.5 miles off campus. I even had a course as a med school. Our guest speaker at graduation was Eleanor Roosevelt. The honors graduate sat behind her. She gave a very stimulating and encouraging speech. Then she turned around and shook our hands. She gave a very firm hand with that Roosevelt smile. She said, "Congratulations," and moved to the next graduate. I didn't wash my hand for a week. My mother never drove. My only guests at graduation were Dr. and Mrs. Strobridge with their big bouquet of red roses.
Did you take any graduate courses?
Yes, I did. My faculty advisor at Syracuse suggested I go for my master's in dietetic. She suggested Columbia. She read her doctorates, where she got her doctorates. I said I have to have a job before I continue my education. She suggested apply for a scholarship at Columbia. I did, and I received a full scholarship, I'm sure with her influence. She also suggested I do a dietetic practicum at St. Louis Hospital across the street at the same time, which I did. My first job, I didn't have to look for a job. A job came to me. The dietitian at Flushing General Hospital was leaving to get married and live in Syracuse. She was my friend I had known on campus earlier. I was accepted at this 300-bed hospital and worked the job for 2 years. When I went to a Sadie Hawkins dance in Jamaica, YMC, met my husband, married, and left the hospital shortly afterwards because our home was too far away. I did retire for 10 years. I didn't find a job. Walt and I wanted a family. Walt was moving up in Boar's Head to pay the bills. We had 3 children. I was busy. I became a den mother for my son and a Girl Scout leader for my daughters. My husband and I wanted our son Bill to have the experience of Boy Scouting. There was no doubt for a boy to become a Boy Scout, his mother had to be a den mother first. I found out why so few mothers wanted to get involved. Having been a Girl Scout leader for years with 15 Girl Scouts, being a den mother for 7-8-year-old boys would be a piece of cake. I never worked so hard in my life, and I enjoyed every minute. Along with my son, I was given 4 other active boys to meet for an hour once a week in my finished basement. I'll give you some examples. The assignment was knots, K-N-O-T-S. And I was given 5 different kinds of, first of all, it took me an hour or 2 to learn the knots myself. Then these laughing cubbies would compete these 5 different knots several times in 15 minutes. They had enough leftover rope to discover and 10 new knots to happily tie each other to the table legs, to each other, to the lamp, and even the happy dog. Knots and Boy Scouts USA you never heard of. They had a very successful lesson in knots. It took me 3/4 of an hour to get them and the dog untangled. I shooed them home, gave Bill a glass of milk. I sat down with a full glass of cool wine, then started planning the next week's cubby meeting. When the children were all in school, we knew we were going to have all 3 children in college at the same time, maybe with future degrees. Another income to our savings would help. And
So did you take another job then?
Job of my dreams. During the summer, the county newspaper advertised a job as food service manager to our local consolidated high school district of 8 junior, senior high in 4 towns. Walt said I should apply. Out of 4 very successful applicants, I got the job. And I'm sure it's because I was a dietitian that kind of perked it up. These other would be very successful managers too, but I had that one advantage. So starting 2 months later, I had the job of feeding 20,000 students and 3,000 staff members breakfast and lunch. I had 125 wonderful, hardworking women and a very busy secretary. I drove 20 miles to see each school with a yearly budget of $12 million. I established nutritious meals, bought wholesale food, and kept financial records with the business office for local, state, and federal audits. I held this job for 18 years. I did have summer vacations.
What did you do on your summer vacations?
The summer did the usual trips with Walt's parents. My parents had died. We also went to national parks across the country. But the summer of 1965, I had a surprise request from Girl Scouts USA. I went to the last Girl Scout roundup. In 1965, the last Girl Scout was held in Farragut National Park, Idaho. By the way, I found out Gretchen, actually, her family camped outside of the entrance. My oldest daughter was fortunate to be selected by Nassau County to attend this roundup free for 2 weeks. Claudia suggested that I attend the roundup as well. She said it would be a great experience to be in such a large encampment. Walt agreed and encouraged me to attend. Aunt Claire, who lived with us, encouraged me as well. So with pressure from the family, I sent a request to national headquarters in Utah to offer my services in any capacity. 4 days later, I received a telegram from national headquarters to come to fly to encampment immediately, all expenses paid and all camping gear supplied. In my request, I had to state my background as a troop leader, as well as my professional job and school lunch. My experience as a troop leader was not what they wanted. It was my mass feeding of children. Long story short, I fed 10,000 Girl Scouts and 1,000 leaders a ton of food daily in 5 miles of wilderness of Idaho. I supervised the filling of 125,000 boxes each day with help of 150 volunteers. I was given a Jeep to use in case of a problem. I just love that Jeep. I wrote many memoirs of my experiences, good and bad. I did have to use my Jeep several times. I got up from my tent at 3 a.m. each morning to meet the frozen food trucks, 18-wheelers delivering milk, water, fresh food, fruits, and vegetables. I was the only source of their drinking water, by the way. The food manager of Delta Airlines set up the menus with Girl Scouts USA approval, bought and delivered the canned foods to the campsite and was on site when I arrived. He said, "I thank God when your letter came in. I hate to camp and I have to get back to my desk in California," and left. I imagine I saved Girl Scout USA a pile of money. I can't imagine him coming cheap. That fall at the National Girl Scouts Convention in Chicago, I was awarded the Friendship Pin. It was only awarded once a year at the convention to the adult Girl Scout for service to Girl Scouting. Debbie Reynolds was our guest speaker. She came out on the stage. My uniform never fit like hers. With her 6-inch heels, she said, "Hello, Girl Scouts," and brought the house down. I did hear from the food service manager at Delta Airlines a month later. He knew I lived on Long Island. He offered me a job to distribute the food service to Delta Airlines at all the airports in New York, much as I did at the Roundup. Of course, I didn't apply. that fall, I went back to the school district. Yes, but I didn't expect or plan that to be my last year with the school district.
What did you do in your retirement?
Well, this is one Friday afternoon. To my surprise, my secretary said, "Mrs. Hummel, you have a call from the Governor Cuomo's office in Albany." When connected, the governor said, "I would like to offer you a new job I have set up as dietitian of New York State. You've been highly recommended by Jim. He was my supervisor. I had to apply to him. He saw all of us, that was his job. And I talked to your Dr. Benedict, your superintendent of schools. He wanted to know if the money the New York State paid to children's institutions across the state was true billing for milk and if they were served nutritious meals. So now I have moved up from feeding and supervising the diets of 20,000 children ages 15 to 18 living at home to the supervising of 220,000 children from birth to 21 years of age living in institutions across New York State. Walt was vice president of Boar's Head and wanted to retire in 2 years. We were in upper 70s and I was going to retire at the same time. I accepted with the understanding I would retire in 2 years. I got the red Chevy of my choice. I got identification from his office. I got credit cards for gas, credit cards, food, lodging, and approving all across New York State. The farm and milk lobby is one of the biggest lobbies in Congress. They reimburse 3 cents for every container drank by children in school lunch programs 16 to 18 years of age who live at home with their parents. Now, Mr. Cohn was asking me to observe the same program to children living in institutions across the state, ages birth to 21. At that time, the state had 2,200 such institutions. I put a hole in them, but I didn't see all of them. 99% of the institutions did all right, but I had given a written report to the Attorney General of 10 institutions. They were cooking the books. I did my homework. I traveled to the Treasury Department, so I knew as I went to each institution what they were receiving, what they told they should be reimbursed. Like I could go to a home that only had 3 bedrooms, but they were claiming they had 15 residents, and they only had the most would be 8. So they were cooking the books. I have to tell you some of the institutions I went to. I went to a halfway house where I sat across and lunch at handsome, absolutely handsome, articulate young man. He was smart, he was cute, and he knew how to handle me, but he was slick with a knife. He had murdered 2 people. I went to a Down syndrome home where I met Timmy. I was talking to the manager and I ate lunch with all these institutions. That's how I knew whether they were drinking milk and what they were eating. And I was talking to the manager and a little warm hand took my hand and come, Gammy. So I knew then he had a grandmother. It was like, Grammy, come. And I had white hair at that time. So we sat at the table and this is what I wanted. I wanted to talk with the people, not the administration, because they could soft cover things, but I had to talk to children and see what they were actually served. And I asked Timmy, this little had in my hand, he said, "I'm Timmy," and I said, "Hello, Timmy, I'm also a grandma," because I knew he evidently a grandma visited him, so he knew my white hair means your grandma. And I said, "Did you have milk for breakfast?" "Yeah, I had milk for breakfast, but I can run fast." "And it's because you run fast, you drink your milk." And I can even beat Jimmy. Hey, what did you, and I want to know if he had some fruits. I said, did you have a banana? Yeah, we have a half a banana for breakfast. I said, well, what did you have for breakfast? Oh, I hate oatmeal, but they make me drink this oatmeal. But I said, you put butter on it and you put milk on it? Yeah. Did you like pizza? Do you like pizza? Yeah, I like pizza. Did the pizza have lettuce on it? I was trying to see if you get some vegetables in here. Yeah, we have, but I have to eat that first. So Timmy, I said goodbye to, but Timmy was a Down syndrome. He had a left foot that was so twisted he couldn't walk on it, and he didn't have a left arm. This is a sad part of my job. It was so hard to me. These kids work so hard on being normal, and they have more grit than a lot of adults. They don't see the harm of pride. You never hear them temper tantrum. They are the soldiers who are hurt and trying to get better. So now I have left my thing, and I'm thinking of the Adirondacks.
Right. You retired there, didn't
I
you?
retired. We sold our home on Long Island, and I turned my red car to the state with 30,000 miles on it. As we entered our camp and began emptying the car, we had a stiff martini on the rocks on our deck facing the lake in the moonlight with smiles on our faces. We both had pressure cooker jobs. It was so peaceful and quiet, heavenly in the Adirondacks. And I wrote many, many emails of my experiences with animals where Walt had saved a baby bear and I had deer in distress. It was really in the mountains, but it's what we both needed. We lived in the Adirondack Mountains for 30 years. And I did think of Florida. After 5 years in the Adirondacks, we became snowbirds to Florida. We were in our 80s when we became permanent members of Florida. The children forced us into a decision because the nearest medical help in the Adirondacks was a male nurse who had an office 10 miles away. Our nearest hospital was 40 miles away. I was 90 and Walt was 92 when he died in my arms in the hospital with pains across the chest. That changed my life completely.
How did you hear of Woodland Pond in Florida?
Gotta get to me. I'll tell you in a minute. This is stubborn. How did you find Woodland Pond in Florida? The old saying is you want to live near your children, but not with them. My daughter, Linda, who lives in Wappingers Falls, was talking to a neighbor who had a friend living in Woodland Pond. He suggested she call Woodland Pond for an appointment. Linda did. She came for lunch with Sharon and was very impressed. Flew to Florida, and I returned to her on the visit myself. I fell in love with Woodland Pond. It had everything I wanted. First of all, it was cheaper to live in Woodland Pond than I was paying in Florida. Secondly, signing up for long-term care was a no-brainer. Health care is expensive and getting more so all the time. I made up my mind immediately. It was the smartest thing I ever did beside marrying Walt was moving to Woodland Pond. 1 month after Linda's visit, I was a resident at Woodland Pond, 2013 at 90 years of age. But I want to tell you, this Council Connections today has given me the opportunity to thank you personally from the bottom of my heart for your friendship, your love, and everlasting encouragement. You are fun to be with. You make me laugh. Deborah Moore keeps my body muscles limber 3 times a week when my muscles want to atrophy. You people are the whipped cream on my cake. Notice I didn't say icing on my cake. Dietitian, officer. So this is the story of a girl who was born and raised on a farm. She loved animals and they loved her back. She educated herself to be a dietitian. For years, she supervised milk and nutritious food offered for breakfast and lunch to actually millions of healthy high school students on Long Island. She even fed thousands of Girl Scouts camping in the wilderness of Idaho. She made sure milk and nutritious food were served to thousands of children with permanent injuries, to students with behavior problems across the flats, shores, and mountains of New York State. She was smart to buy into the CCRC and New Paltz, who are doing their damnedest, oops, sweet word, darndest to keep her healthy, happy, secure, and stimulated at 100 years of age. I've had a great ride.
Wow. What a life. One question's just nagging me though. Your father, who never wanted you to go to college, did you ever see him again or ever have a rapprochement with him?
Yeah, I did. I was married and had a child, and I got a note from him suddenly saying, I want to come down and see you. And he did come down. He was dying. I didn't know it, but he knew it. And he did apologize for not helping me more with my education.
Wow, that's terrific. Well, questions for our dear friend Bernice? Anybody have any comments or questions?
Over.
Bernice, you've been saying thank you to us. We thank you for being our neighbor and friend.
Oh, nice. Thank you. Thank you.
Anybody
Question-
else wanna say
questions?
anything or ask Bernice a question?
Bernice, was religion always a very important part of your life?
Was what?
Religion.
Religion.
Oh,
Was
religion. Yes,
religion.
it was. Yes, it was. That put me through college. You know, you needed that background, and I didn't have it from my parents. Yes, I did. Right, I'm still am.
I just want to thank you, Bernice, for lighting up yoga classes. You are a wonderful presence.
Thank you. I have to tell you, I went to many children's hospitals and so forth, but I did get, I did visits. I don't, a jail where I had to really have protection to do my job. I would go in and when I went in, I had a frisk like none of you have had. First of all, I went to the federal prison in Ogdensburg. It's on the Canadian border. And when I went there, they knew I came from Albany. They knew all this, but I went through a frisk where I even had to take my shoes off. They went through your pocketbook and your billfold and everything. And then when I got in, I had two healthy guards on each side with rubber hoses for my protection in case there was somebody could grab me, a hostess. I could be a hostess. And I didn't eat with them and I didn't want to. But what they did, they took me to their dining room and they have a one-way window. So I could look through the window and see what they were eating, what they were drinking. They had separated the people up to 21, and then they were separated from the hardcore prisoners. And so I could see what they do. So they did pass it. I was wondering, my biggest objections were with the Department of Corrections. They were always skimming. I probably saved the state some money because they were lying on it. And you know, if you lie on your IRS, they go back 8 years. Well, they went back 8 years on these institutions. And so there was quite a heavy fine, which they'll remember for quite a while. But this is going on all the time. And that's what Mr. Cuomo wanted to know. That this money they were paying back and reimbursement was an honest and true, assessment and a true bill. So that was an experience that wasn't only the children and all that I saw, but I saw adults. And out in West New York State, they have farms that are actually operated by men or boys, teenagers, who haven't great fines against them, but they work the farm. The farm is actually managed and by these boys, and it's they have such a great program because these boys can go to college when they do their term, and they could be interested in fruit growing. There's many hobbies or businesses in farming that I felt right at home with them. But that is a great program. New York State does, and then I think all the states do a great job in handling these children.
Bernice, you're known not only for your memoirs, but also for your sewing. When did you have time to sew anything?
Oh, well, actually, you're a farmer's daughter, you learn to sew. And I learned on a Pebble, the Pebble sewing machine. But when I was in college in home management, I had to take a dress design course. And there, my final grade, I had to sew in a suit that I had to wear. So you in college really taught me how I can get sew. Yes.
When, where, and why did you learn quilling?
Hobby. Hobby. I had time, and I think in my one-room schoolhouse it started, we had newspaper, and she would cut it in small trips, and then we had sticks and you wound it around. That started, I think.
Could you tell, for those of us who don't know what quilling is, what it is?
Oh, it's paper that's probably 1/4 inch, is different lengths, and you turn it around, and then you get pressure, and you take it off, and you get pressure to open it up as it opens up. It does. All kinds of flowers.
Is it like origami? No?
But Bernice, my question is, in your 100 years, what was the greatest invention that you've personally seen come through?
Well, the development of education, no doubt. And I was a one-room schoolhouse. Yeah, education's come a long way. I would give education. I am thrilled so many people came. You're really interesting.
I just want to say, can you hear me? That I go with Bernice to St. Joseph's Church here in town. And everyone, we sit in the back because we're on walkers. And I might tell you that everyone in the church knows who she is. She kisses everybody. She shakes hands with everyone. When she turned 100, Father Sal, our pastor, blessed her, and the whole mass sang happy birthday to her. So she's well known. Believe me, you have no idea. Right, John?
Thank you. They're very kind to me.
Is that it? One more question. One more question from Mark.
The question. I thought you were 101.
No, I'm working on it.
Well, thank you, Bernice. This has been just wonderful. And thank you, everybody, for coming to Council Connections.